Hey there, Whovians, and welcome to another episode of our Station Who. That's right, folks. We are back, and we've got a great one to talk tonight. We are going back to the Fifth Doctor era, and we are going to be looking at Planet of Fire. It's the last episode with Turlo, the first one with Perry, and the second to last episode with the Fifth Doctor. It's pretty amazing. And I'm not even going to talk about Chameleon. It's a chameleon-free zone tonight. I wish. We got to talk a lot about chameleon. Yeah, I wish we could get away with that. But it's awesome to be back with everybody tonight. This is our first after holiday special, after talking about the 60th anniversary specials. So it's like coming off a good high, type thing. And we're coming to the story. So and it's going to be a lot of fun to talk about. We will be spoiling the hell out of it. So as River Songs, be prepared for spoilers of a show that was 40 years ago already. God, really that far?
Yeah,
wow.
Yeah.
I know.
Thanks.
Okay.
Thanks a lot for reminding us.
I know. So it's going to be a fun one to talk about. We've got a great crew here, of course, to talk about it. Let's welcome, of course, our regulars. Mr. Mike Gordon is here.
Howdy.
How are you, my friend?
Peachy keen, and yourself?
I'm doing great. And, of course, Ms. Mary Ogle.
Hi, everybody. It is fantastic to be here.
Good to have you in good health. And once again, Mary.
Yes, I have been getting over the flu slowly.
It kicks your butt once you get it. It really, really sucks.
Man, I am so ready for it to just go away.
Mm-hmm. And we are joined by Matthew Kresal once again. Welcome, sir.
Thank you for having me again.
Oh, it's good. We haven't talked to you for a bit, and did you enjoy the specials and such?
Yeah, I think by and large, I enjoyed it. It was something different than I think what I was kind of expecting from an anniversary specials, really, instead of just having the one. And I will admit, I was a little nervous, not being the biggest fan of David Tennant, to have Tennant back, and it's like, it's 2008 all over again. But, I was pleasantly surprised that it was, in fact, not 2008 all over again. I was kind of spoiled, though, with the first one because I got to see it at Chicago TARDIS. That weekend. And Rachel Talalay, the director, was there, so they brought her in to introduce it and also back out when at the end of it. And I was in a room with 800, 1,000 fellow fans watching this thing, and we gave her a standing ovation, and I think we made her happy cry. So it was a special moment, and I came out of watching Star Beast with a buzz that kind of continued on into the others. So yeah, I think it's safe to say I enjoyed them.
That is awesome. I'm glad to hear that you did, and it would have been fine if you didn't, but you know what I mean. I'm glad to hear that you did. And it's pretty awesome that, you got to see it with a huge crowd of people and to see, Rachel there too, which is pretty awesome. So cool. And, I'm sure Chicago TARDIS was as wonderful as always.
Oh, yes, it was. This year was a really good one. Of course, it was the 60th, so there were lots of guests. Carol Ann Ford was one of them, so I was, determined, come hell or high water, I was going to be there. And in one of those really strange moments that only happens at conventions, there was a panel that was put together about the character of Susan, which I thought would just be a regular fan discussion. Oh, no, they put 3 fans, myself included, with Carol Ann Ford on a panel.
Wow.
I sat, not 5 feet away from Carol Ann Ford, Susan, the original Doctor Who companion. And I'm sitting there going, 15, 16 years ago, I was watching her for the first time in The Five Doctors. What is my life and how did I get here?
So did you keep on pinching yourself just to make sure you weren't sleeping?
I did sort of, I took a few moments, to kind of sit there and go, this is surreal.
Those are the kind of moments, though, that when life tells you you're on the right path.
Absolutely.
Exactly. You're doing something right. It's the little rewards in life that you get for doing it.
Yeah. No, baby. I mean, it was, I still, it still can't quite believe that happened. And if I didn't have pictures of it, I would wonder. But thankfully, other people took pictures, so it was apparently a group hallucination, not just a singular one.
Awesome.
That is
How was
awesome.
she? Is she in good health and a good guest to talk to?
Yeah, she seems to be doing, fairly well. She's in her early 80s now, but she seems to be getting around pretty well and still sprightly, and the mind is still there and still ticking over and active and can remember lots of things. She had lots of great stories to tell, both about Doctor Who and
Nice.
some of her other experiences. So she doesn't do many U.S. conventions, so knowing
Right.
that she was doing this one, it was like, if I have to sleep in the car and freeze to death outside the hotel, by Jove, I will.
Yeah,
At
absolutely.
least you will die happy.
True.
Yeah.
It was very cold in Chicago this time too. We even got some snow while I was up there, so probably would have died in the car. So I'm glad that didn't have to sleep in the car.
Glad it didn't come to that.
No,
Yeah.
and there wasn't a major out in the back or something like that for you, so it's okay.
Yeah, very true.
There we go. Well, we also definitely would love to hear from you guys at home. Please write us feedback@earthstationwho.com and let us know what you guys have been up to since we talked last. And what have you been to? Did anyone go to Chicago TARDIS? Is anyone planning on going to Gallifrey? And it's interesting because Gallifrey used to be the big Doctor Who convention in the US, and it used to sell out months in advance, almost like within minutes a lot of times. And now you could still get tickets like less than a month before the show. And it's just interesting how, that's changed a little bit and everything. So I don't know if it's a look at fandom with Doctor Who or just the need, because they haven't upped the number of tickets that they release or anything. It's just interesting with that.
And their guest list is still pretty impressive.
Yeah, they
very
always
much
have
so.
an impressive guest list.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Absolutely. So I don't think it's that.
And
I don't
it's
know. Is it
small.
really is it one of those things that just hasn't come back yet since the pandemic?
I think so. I really do. And I'm gonna be curious to see, like, next year when Doctor Who has been on the air for, with the new Doctor and, on Disney and such, and seeing what the crowds are like there. I think that would be a good way to judge it. I'm not judging this year type thing. So it would be interesting to see. And if not, maybe we'll plan a road trip to, Los Angeles for 2025.
Drive
You
cross
know?
country.
Matthew,
Exactly.
was the turnout at Chicago TARDIS pretty solid?
It was, per the organizers, the most attended convention they've had since 2017.
Goodness
Really?
gracious.
So
Okay.
That's awesome.
yeah. And it definitely felt like there were more people there this year. It wasn't as crowded as it was in 2013, 2014, when it felt like, things were, the show was kind of huge. But there were definitely more people this year than had been there either when because I missed a couple of years, either when I was there in 19 or indeed 21 or 22.
Mhm.
The last
Well,
time I was there was, oh my goodness.
you're gonna date yourself, Mr. Gordon. Just remember that.
I know that suitably enough for this episode, Peter Davison was the guest. I believe all three of his companions were guests there too. So it was a sort of a Fifth Doctor era look at, which was not my intention to take advantage of. Instead, I was hoping to see. I think it was one of the times that Alex Kingston dodged me. So
Again?
I think she was supposed to be there and bailed when she found out that I was going to be there.
Well, darn it, Mike. But
I
at
know.
least
I ruined it for everybody else. I'm sorry.
you
Yeah.
guys will always have Dragon Con, so there you go. So there you go with that. All right, let's dive into a little bit of Doctor Who news. The big news, of course, coming out of everywhere is that Millie Gibson is out after a season and a half or so of Doctor Who. And, people were saying that she was dumped. People were saying that she was let go.
No,
No,
not
not
people. It was headlines.
headline.
Clickbait
Yeah.
headlines.
Yeah.
Nasty
Clickbait headlines.
UK Mirror headlines were saying
Yeah.
shit like
Yeah,
that,
the
like
Daily
that.
Mail and the Mirror and
Yeah, all of them.
Exactly. I
Yeah.
mean,
But
yeah.
no, but it's interesting because even Variety picked it up, and their headline was Doctor Who star Millie Gibson to be replaced by Barada Sethu after one season, and which is true, but it's not true, and it's typical Doctor Who. Companions leave, and we've talked. I think we talked about it even when we did our live episode last time. That how long is she going to stay? How long is Chudy going to stay? Is he going to stay for the 3 seasons, or is he going to stay longer? We don't know, but there seems to be a pattern, and especially if you think about it, with the RTD era of Doctor Who when he was doing it, every season had a change with him because first season was of course the Ninth Doctor and Rose, but then the second season was Rose and the 10th Doctor, and after that it was Martha and the 10th Doctor, and then the third season was of course with the wonderful Donna and the Doctor, and so we had each season was something different. So I think pretty much he's par for course with her only being in for a season or so. And she'll
Well,
probably
yeah.
not
do
exactly.
something.
I mean,
Yeah.
not exactly,
Not
because
unusual.
he hasn't changed. He hasn't changed companions mid-season before.
No, but it also seems like she's not. They've already said she's not going to be in the Christmas special, and so
but she has done some filming for the second season, so
yeah,
Yeah.
it could possibly be something like how Martha was, how she popped up during the Donna and Doctor season.
And how Rose never went away.
Yeah, exactly.
yeah,
Still hasn't.
rubbing it in.
Yeah. Yeah, I think we got spoiled by Moffat keeping, the Pawns and Clara around, but also, the Chibnall era, the companions basically, they came and they stayed, and, with the exception of Dan popping in for that last, Jodie season. The companions stuck around for a bit, which is more or less how it was in Classic Who, except for, that one brief period during late Hartnell where they were changing companions every 6 serials. I think people have kind of forgotten that, but also, as we've talked about before, the Mirror knows good and well that anything with Doctor Who is going to, sell papers, and it's going to get people, all those all important clicks onto the website. So,
not only does the Mirror know that, but Russell T Davies knows that too.
Yeah.
And by changing the companion mid-season, he knows that's going to get headlines.
Mm-hmm.
He knows that's going to get headlines, and I do not doubt at all. I mean, look, if it's something where she didn't work out, I mean that's a viable option, to be sure. And I hope that's not the case, because a lot of times when showrunners have to sort of wrap up storylines really quickly on the fly, sometimes, most of the time, it doesn't go as well as we'd like, right? So I hope this was a plan. But I wouldn't be surprised at all if it was a plan, and hopefully planned enough in time so that she gets a good send off, and that the new companion gets a great introduction. And Russell T is not replacing her with a white companion, which is even more headline material. So I'm pretty sure that he knows exactly what he's doing to keep Doctor Who in the conversation. When there's no Doctor Who news, there's Doctor Who news.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
Right.
And
Oh yeah. I mean, Russell's sitting back and laughing, I'm sure, at this whole thing, because
Absolutely.
it's playing right
Yeah.
into his hands.
Absolutely. Whatever it is,
Yeah.
he can work with it. I don't think there's any such thing with him with bad publicity.
right. No, I agree
Yeah.
with that. And it was a dead period for any Doctor Who news or anything. It's been 3 weeks since we had the Christmas special, so it was
almost a
perfect
full month
time.
now.
Yeah, exactly. And so it's the perfect time to drop this.
Well, I mean, also in
keep
the fact
yeah.
that it was going to come out because, I mean, pictures from location shooting have been leaking out, so we have
Mhm.
seen the new companion already in shots that were, with the new doctor and everything. One in particular, I guess there is something where they're in some sort of like southern America, like Miami or something like that. It takes place in the in early America. Well, not early America, but like sort of like the 40s or 50s or something. I don't know. It's hard to tell. I didn't read the whole thing because I don't like spoilers, but it was right in my face as far as the picture and everything goes. And I'm like, well, of course, if this picture's out there, then they need to get ahead of it.
No, most definitely. And now we are officially a cat video. Thanks, Matthew.
Yeah, everybody meet tonight's fifth host.
Exactly. And the fifth host's name is
He is Tigger.
Hello,
Ah.
Tigger.
Oh, hi, Tigger.
That is cute. But yeah, what you were saying, Mike, completely makes sense. It's true. And, it would be more of a shock, though, if we didn't have a Yaz already. And, we've already had, companions of color. So but it's going to be interesting to see, a non-white Doctor Who crew. And, you're already getting some pushback about that. I've seen, how
Yeah, but
it's
it's only
more
for the
woke
people
than
who.
ever.
I was going to say it's only from the people who don't matter anyway.
And, well,
Yeah,
it doesn't matter. That's the thing.
yeah.
The key is that the actress is solid. I mean, the only thing
Oh,
I've really
very much
seen
so.
her in is Andor, but she was notable in Andor, and I think she's. Uh, It'll be interesting to see what kind of companion that she or her character turns out to be, because we know from Andor she could play the hard military type, and I don't know if that's what we're getting, because that would be an interesting juxtaposition with Shooty's Doctor. But whatever it is, I'm really excited because I've seen her before and stuff, and I liked her. So
Mhm.
yeah, it's not like oh, I'm not really sure.
But it's interesting too. Like Mike, I've seen her in Andor, but I've also saw her. I remember her from the last Jurassic World movie too, that she was
Try to
part of.
try to block that movie. Sorry.
I know you tried to.
Not your favorite.
It's no Godzilla -1. I'll tell you that much. But yeah, it was interesting for the announcement, and I'm truthfully looking forward to the rest seeing season 1 with, with Millie as the companion. Everything I've seen, I loved her in the Christmas special. I thought she was charming as heck. And, I'm looking forward just to see what she has to bring to us and everything and enjoy that. And that's the part of the problem with, instant communication, instant news and everything. You know, this is, it almost dampers her whole season a little bit, knowing that she's going to be replaced already.
Well, I do feel bad that, like that if she gets any blowback from this, as far as I don't know, it just, not like sort of tarnishing her reputation, career, whatever, because that would stink.
Mhm.
But I enjoyed her. Okay, I must say I wouldn't, like, based on the one thing we've seen, I wouldn't put her in my top 10 of companions, but I think she was pretty solid, and I'm certainly not opposed to her. But I will say, I'm actually, because I've seen the actress, I guess, in Andor and everything. I guess I'm more excited for this companion now. Um, knowing that she's coming. So I don't think it's gonna. I'm hoping that it doesn't deter me from like enjoying her while she lasts, Millie. That is, but um, uh yeah, I would hate for it to, like, for the press and all this kind of stuff to blow back on her, because I don't think it's something that's necessarily, from everything we've heard, it's not her fault.
Mm-mm.
No, I doubt it has anything to do with her. I
No, I
mean,
Yeah.
it
don't think so at
probably
all.
was just, it's probably been planned all along. I mean,
Yeah.
it's not, we just talked about it, it's not unusual at all for RTD to have a companion for one season and to bring them back and sort of sprinkle them in a few episodes in the next. season
exactly.
or two, and that's now.
Yeah.
It sounds like that's what he's doing.
Yeah.
Yep.
I think that the reason this is also getting headlines is the fact that they're filming so far in advance now that this news is also broken before we've had a chance to really see her beyond, what we saw her in the Christmas special. So, people are going to read into it, anything and everything they want to read into it. And the fact that the next companion is going to be, as you said, an actress from Andor just, also feeds into the, oh my God, Disney is going to ruin Doctor Who crowd. But,
Yeah.
Nope, agreed with that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, just like the tabloids, especially the British tabloids, the online haters are gonna, no matter what you do, they're gonna do something. They're gonna say something. So there's really nothing you can do to stop them. Just ignore them and move on.
No,
Yeah.
agreed. Agreed. And that's the interesting thing about it is, these are the same tabloids that even before Shooty started as the Doctor, saying Shooty Godwa, they're not happy with him, that they're going to let him go, that he's already on his way out, and that they're already looking for the next Doctor. And it's like,
Yeah, in fact,
no.
they say it about every single Doctor.
Yeah,
every
they do that
Yeah.
all the time.
Yeah.
I was
Exactly.
going to say, I can still remember Matt Smith was going to leave after that first season because he was too young and he was partying all the time and he wasn't behaving on set and this, that, and the other. None of which turned out to be true, as as we all learned. But it sells and it gets clicks.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Clickbait. And you know what? It is what it is, folks. This is Doctor Who. It's all about change, as we always like to say. And just hold on, because there's always going to be something next coming with it. And that's the wonderful thing about the series. Speaking of series, we're getting another DVD Blu-ray of Doctor Who. That's right, folks. We're getting a new season of Tom Baker. That's right, season 15. And that's the Doctor and Leela. And they released a Leela during the Time War video.
Oh, that clip was awesome.
Oh, that
It
was
was.
I
beautiful.
loved it.
That was so fantastic.
Matt, does this fall in line with what she's been doing in Big Finish?
As far as I know, I mean, I haven't heard any of the Time War Gallifrey sets, but ironically enough, I was actually re-listening to the last of the War Doctor sets that Big Finish recorded with John Hurt before he passed, which reintroduced Leela into the Time War. And I literally was listening to that the day that the trailer dropped. And it was
Oh, wow.
this is just one of those funky bits of symmetry. But it does tie into, I mean, Big Finish have established in a lot of the audios that she's there for the Time War. So, in some capacity, having been there at the beginning and then vanishes for a bit and comes back in with the War Doctor. So it was a nice little bit of things, that they were able to tie it all together. Even if it was for, like a 5-minute video that mostly is going to be on YouTube. But the buzz that generated for that set, but also people going, oh my God, Louise Jameson, classic companion again, is always wonderful to see as well.
Very much so. And it was so much fun to see. And it's such a good season of Doctor Who. And, going all the way back, I think because we just recently did the Sunmakers, we also Vision of Time is on there. So there's a lot of great stuff that season.
Oh yeah,
So
she's one of my favorite companions. So
Oh,
yes,
yeah.
that's a great season.
We get to be introduced to K9. So that's
Yeah.
awesome in that season.
Well, it's not perfect. I'm just kidding.
I know.
I actually kind of like Invisible Enemy. I've always had a soft
do
spot
too.
for it,
I
which
do
was
too.
why I'm always
It's fun.
surprised when people hate on it. And it's just like, it's not that bad, folks.
No, it's fun, and she's great.
Oh, yeah.
She and the fact that they didn't have great chemistry off screen, I don't know if it added to the chemistry that they have on screen, but they just work together really well. And it's really a doctor and companion relationship that we haven't seen a lot of. And I just really appreciate it. And, talking about, this new companion coming in with 15, if she is a little bit more military based, it would be really kind of refreshing. It would be sort of harkening back to Leela. I think.
No, I totally could see that. I think it's not a bad idea. And you know what? I always liked it because it also felt like a little bit of My Fair Lady, the doctor trying to, civilize Leela.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, certainly in Talons of Wang Chang, there are really some
yeah.
Pygmalion type elements to that story. A
Mhm.
lot. It's like
Yeah.
really in your face.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But there's a lot going on with that series, and that in of itself is a great. It's one of the greatest stories. I think it's. I think Mike, you credited that as one of the ones. It was your first, right?
It was my first.
Ah.
And so, Talons was Channel 9 in New York, WOR. On Saturday afternoon, I was flipping channels, and all of a sudden there was ninjas and giant rats and a girl with a knife trying to, take out this guy. And it was just like awesome. And then there was a guy in a Sherlock Holmes hat. And it was just like with a long scarf. It's like, I'm in, you know, and I've never looked back, which is pretty darn wonderful. So yeah, it's pretty cool that we're going to get that. No release date yet. We're
Of
that
course.
here in the US, of course.
Of course not.
No,
There's
I
that.
just got an email from Amazon saying that the season 20 Blu-ray is pushed back all the way to April now. It was originally supposed to come out in November.
Wow.
So
we'll get it 6 to 8 months after the UK, like it seems like we always do.
exactly. So we'll see. We will see. Cover artwork is great. I showed it to Maddox when I was with him, and I was like, "Dude, this looks just like your artwork." And it's like, mysterious, isn't it, Faber? So
Yeah. I mean, Lee Binding, who's the artist, does great work anyway. So,
He does.
Oh,
you know,
very much
Yeah.
so. Very much
I
so.
follow him on Instagram, and he always has amazing. He's been doing Doctor Who artwork for a long time now.
yeah, back in when the DVD range was still going 13, 14 years ago. In fact, his DVD art has been my phone wallpaper on a number of occasions.
Yeah, it's really
That's
solid.
awesome. No, his work is great, and I'm looking forward to seeing what kind of bonuses they have, and the interviews and such. So it should be a ton of fun to get that one. And and as I'm doing that, I'm trading out my older seat DVDs, and it's just like making piles. And the people at when I sell them at McKay's, they're just like, more Doctor Who, awesome, because they're not going to stay on the shelf all that long, which is pretty cool. So that is what we have for Doctor Who news, which is wonderful. So let's take a quick break, and we'll be back in a moment. And we are going to be talking all about Planet of Fire. All right, YouTube people, this is your first bonus. That's right, folks. We are going to be talking a little bit about, Doctor Who. What do you guys do, like, in the wilderness years, in the between series and everything? Do I know, like Matthew, you listen to a lot of Big Finish and such.
Oh yeah, a lot of Big Finish. In fact, as I was saying, just last week, and the week before that, I was re-listening for the first time since it came out in 2017, the last War Doctor set with John Hurd. So that's the most recent thing I've heard
Right.
from them. But just before that, actually, I did a huge marathon across a couple of weeks of the entire Once and Future strand that's been released to date. So that was interesting. To sort of take it all in one kind of giant go.
I think it was probably easier to listen into if you had them more in a row to listen to instead of just once a month like they were putting them out originally.
That's the impression I got from the reviews, because I saw occasional posts as stuff was coming out, but also with now going back and reading things that people were getting very frustrated as they were coming out month by month, going, "How does this all tie together?" And of course, the answer to that is, and I don't think this is any kind of spoiler, but it's just they're all a bunch of standalone stories for about 5 or 6 of them, and then in the very last one, it's like, okay, here's where everything comes together. I'm not necessarily sure as a writer myself that's the way to tell a story. But it was a lot of fun, and getting to hear, Christopher Eccleston and David Warner together, in the penultimate one, for example, was just, I didn't think that was ever going to happen. It is bittersweet as well because it's the last thing David Warner recorded for them before he passed.
Wow.
So, and Big Finish being a huge part of my Doctor Who fandom, David Warner is on my list of favorite doctors. I don't know too many people that's the case for, if you're not a Big Finish listener. So, we never would have had David Warner without, Big Finish. And, going back to John Hurt, we got 12 more episodes with John Hurt because Big Finish managed to get him into a studio and he was keen to keep working, even though he was, ill with with cancer that would eventually take his life, but he wanted to keep working and Big Finish gave him an outlet for that. So
we got more Missy. We've gotten more Paternoster Gang. We've gotten more River Song, because of Big Finish.
Oh, yeah.
But, all right, maybe not River Song, but that's the stories have been great. But that theme song, oh my God.
I kind of like it. So, but apparently it's my week to be contrarian here on the podcast.
Well, that's okay. Everyone has to be every once in a while, so it's okay.
That's why we bring you on.
We can forgive you.
What about you, Mike or Mary? What do you guys have you guys been watching anything Doctor Who wise, or reading, or listening?
I mean, I also have been listening to Big Finish because I just love Big Finish and I have a huge backlog because I buy stuff every time there are sales.
Yep.
So yeah, I mean the great thing about Doctor Who is you are never going to run out of content. There's always going to be something. There's going to be a book. There's going to be a comic. There's going to be a Big Finish. There's even free stuff you can listen to. You can go listen to podcasts. I mean, I actually also caught up on a few podcasts I haven't listened to in a while. And
That's cool.
Yeah, so it's been, I mean, there's always something.
Mm-hmm. Very much so. What about you, Mikey?
Well, I just watched a story from the 5th season era called Planet of Fire. I know you might have heard of it. And
no, never.
and the truth of the matter is that this show, recording this podcast, allows me to have my, to scratch my Doctor Who itch like all the time on a regular basis. I don't usually have a lot of time to watch much Doctor Who related stuff outside of this. So, and I'm really thankful because I make time to catch up on. I mean, thanks to us recording this, I will eventually, I hope, have seen like all of the stories, even Trial of the Time Lord, and a lot of the Big Finish and whatnot. So I think the only thing that I do, maybe that you guys that we don't talk about on the show a lot, and it comes in ways for me depending on whether or not I can really swing it, but I really try to keep up with the comics as much as I can, and I have enjoyed those to varying degrees, of course, but I do like to read good. There's been a good history of Doctor Who comics over the history of the franchise, and I can never, as Mary said, there's even more, even outside of everything else. Even if I just focused on the comics, I would have enough material to last me for years. So.
Nope, totally makes sense. Because, like, for me, I've been reading a lot of the comics, and I have a backlog of comics right now. And I just got done reading the Missy miniseries that they did for Titan, which was amazing. Ooh. And also, I got to listen to some of the Once and Future. So it's been for Big Finish, and it's always fun. And then just picking up random stuff, like Mary said, when they're on sale. It's always great to pick it up.
I've sales all the time.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
All you have to do is wait for like one of the actors who's played the Doctor or companion their birthday.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah,
there's a lot of them.
Yeah, I mean, there's a big Tom Baker sale going on at the moment because his 90th birthday was the other day. So,
yeah,
exactly. Happy 90th, Tom Baker.
Yeah, it's happy 90th.
Yes.
Because he's watching us on YouTube. So,
Of course he is.
Of
I
course,
was going, indeed.
I mean, that goes without saying.
So
That's how he keeps up with Doctor Who.
Exactly. Through us. Through us,
Yeah.
of course.
Yes.
So I think that's pretty cool stuff, though. And, I think there's like everyone's saying, there's tons of Doctor Who stuff to watch. And, of course, we started watching Planet of Fire the other night, and there's no way I couldn't watch Caves of Androzani again, because that's such a good story. And, and it's just like, it's fun to be able to have that at our fingertips. And, I was watching the 50th anniversary special because I just got done over the cruise. When I did a cruise, I read the book, the Day of the Doctor. And so I wanted to see how much it matched up to the episode and such. And so I got to watch it again. So it was actually tons of fun, and realizing how good Hurt was as the War Doctor. It was just awesome. So it's cool stuff. And, there's always good Doctor Who out there, but there's always a lot of good everything. So it's cool stuff to see.
Yeah. And we're really kind of lucky that we have it all at our fingertips. I had COVID recently and was stuck here at home. And one of the things I watched was an interesting sort of 20, 30-minute long YouTube video where somebody went through and did the history of the VHS releases. And from the time, it took basically 20 years to release the entire show as it then existed on VHS. And you kind of think about how long people would have waited. There were stories that from the time it was broadcast to the time it was released on video, we're talking 30 plus years in some cases. So, we're really kind of lucky that, I can't imagine that anybody in the BBC in 1963, when they were first making the show, thought that people would still be watching it on, computers, 60 years from then. They probably thought they'd be lucky if somebody watched it the next year, on a repeat or something.
I mean, that's why they threw them out.
I was going to say exactly. They didn't. Yeah, they didn't keep them. So they had to reuse those tapes.
No,
Well,
exactly.
They were expensive.
Oh, very much so. Very, very much so. So, all right, YouTube folks, that is your first bonus. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for watching us up on YouTube. And, if you liked it, please subscribe. We would really appreciate it. That's always a good thing. There's a little subscribe button right down at the bottom, so you can find it. I have faith in you guys. It's a good thing. Okay, let's come back to the regular show now. Welcome back. Now we are talking about Planet of Fire. We are going back to February 23rd, 1984. Wow. It is almost exactly 40 years. Wow. That is pretty amazing. We missed it by a month. So it's interesting. This is actually the first time I've actually seen this one.
Oh, wow.
Really?
No, I know. Shocker there.
And it's a shocker.
I've never seen this one. I've read the book. I've read the Target novelization. But for some reason, when PBS never showed it, and for some reason, I never picked up the VHS of this either.
Well, I know why
Or the
PBS
DVD.
never showed it.
Yeah. So we got, we lost a companion in this one, and we gained a companion.
Hey,
So-
look, we're switching companions mid-season. That's never done.
Exactly.
What? That's not allowed?
That is not allowed.
Since we're not watching these in any sort of logical order, it is interesting to me that we saw the as far as the Fifth Doctor's companions goes, we've seen them not disembark in the correct order. At least I haven't.
No.
So because I think the first one that I saw leave was Tegan,
Right.
and then Nissa, and now Turlo. So it is kind of interesting to see it sort of out of order. And I did, I know that there are gaps in between those episodes. So that is kind of interesting to me, like, as well. I don't think I filled in all those gaps. So to me, this was interesting. This is the first time I've seen just the Fifth Doctor and Turlough on an adventure.
I think this is the only time they were
Yeah.
on an adventure alone.
Well, then,
So,
Yeah,
Yeah.
because Janet Fielding was there. This is the only story that Janet Fielding doesn't make, Fifth Doctor story, I should say, that Janet Fielding does not make an appearance in, because she's one of the heads, of course, at the end of Case of Androzani. So
exactly.
this was very much a rarity. But I think my experience first seeing it, Mike, was a lot like yours, because I came across it on VHS out of my local public library, in the mid-noughties when they still had VHS tapes.
Mhm.
And I had was bouncing around the era all over the place and sort of watching it for the first time. And I think I'd seen Perry in a couple of Six Doctor stories at that point, so I knew who she was. And it was interesting to kind of watch. I didn't know Turlough very, very well at all. So it was like, okay, I'd met him in the Five Doctors, and then I got to see him leave. And it's like, such is life.
well,
Mhm.
and that's also
Exactly.
kind of interesting too, because he has a whole storyline, like a linear storyline where he, is a traitor, turns heel or whatever, and then redeems himself, and it's interesting to watch, even though that all of that stuff is over, and I've seen most of that, thank goodness, because it makes me appreciate. When Turlough is not being honest with the Doctor here, you could tell like Peter Davison does a really good job at going, I don't know if I trust you.
He's got reason.
Yeah, he's got
a
reason
lot
not
of
to trust
reason
this
with
guy.
not him. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
right from the very beginning of this story, Turlough is doing stuff that's like, oh my God, is he, working against the Doctor again?
Well, it's
Yeah, do
always
you think that was on
interesting.
purpose? They wanted to try to lead you astray?
Mhm.
I'm
Yeah.
sure.
Think that?
Yeah, there's nothing about John Nathan Turner that's subtle, Mary. This
Very true.
This I've learned.
Mhm.
Yeah, world's worst showrunner. But yeah.
Yeah. There is
Yeah.
nothing subtle about anything with this. And it was interesting, though. I liked how they did a lot of on location shooting for this, though. I thought it was some very beautiful scenery.
Well, they did have some really nice shots. Yeah.
It's true.
The water.
At first I was like, oh my God, are we just going to have this whole thing in a quarry? But no, they actually
No, they are on location.
they are
Yeah.
on location. I was like, ooh, especially
And-
that we don't see it again, but that first shot where we're introduced to, I don't remember what they,
Howard.
to the prophets. Like,
The religious
Oh,
guy.
Timenoff.
Yeah.
Timenoff,
And
yeah.
it's in this like really beautiful like house, and I'm like, oh, they're shooting on location inside. This is really, but then that only is for that one scene, and they never go there again.
Yeah.
I was like,
Well,
that's kind of disappointing.
that's because that was the bar of the hotel they were staying in, and they couldn't leave it like that for long.
The
whole reason they ended. Yeah, the whole reason they ended up on Lanzarote was because Fiona Cumming, who was the director of this, had gone there on holiday and came back and showed John Nathan Turner a bunch of pictures. And John Nathan Turner went, that's going to be next season's, location filming. And basically, he did it so he could get a working holiday out of it. So maybe not the reason to, decide you're going to commission the whole story, but it could be worse. I mean, I've seen the two Doctors, so it could be worse.
Oh yeah,
point.
it can always be worse. We know that.
Yeah.
Exactly. And it's
Goes
interesting
right.
because it was beautifully shot. I did love Anthony Ainley in this. He was awesome as the Master / Chameleon.
He was having a good time.
Yeah,
Yes, he
it's nice
was.
to see him
Master.
back. To see him
Mhm.
back.
Yeah.
All right, so I'm gonna have to ask a question because this is okay.
Uh-oh.
So I
Uh-oh.
get confused now. In the span of the franchise, most of the Doctor storyline, we follow the Doctor most of the time is pretty linear. Like when he changes, we see it so it's not out of time. It's not certain stories. There are segments that are out of time and mixed together, whatever. But for the most part, through the course of the whole 60+ franchise, we've seen it from the Doctor's perspective in pretty much a linear order, right? As opposed to later on when we meet River Song, that's opposite order for her, even though it's not completely opposite. It's sort of mixed and matched, and it's not completely like anti-parallel or whatever you call it. Now, what I don't know about the meetings with the Master. Like, are the meetings with the Master pretty linear, or are they out of time and out of sync as well?
They never really say.
I think on TV, because of the sort of references that are usually laid in on TV, they're usually linear. It's when you start getting into the spin-off media, the comics, and the Big Finish audios that they start meeting out of order. And I can say, and to be terrible bit of self-promotion, there's an entire fan, charity anthology of stories of doctors and masters meeting out of order, which I contributed to. And still raising money for, I think, a UK Alzheimer's charity so please go buy a copy. But this is following on from King's Demons, which would, because that's where Chameleon was introduced.
Right.
We've had the 5 Doctors in the meantime, but, nobody mentions about, last time I saw you were on Gallifrey kind of thing. So, but no, it seems like they're meeting more or less in chronological order.
Yeah, because I mean, it could be that I haven't seen it or that I just don't remember it, because my memory is pretty shady as well. Because I don't remember leaving the Master in a shrunken state. So, so when we see him,
there's an implication that because the Doctor has done something to his compression algorithm when we leave him in King's Demons, but they don't specifically show him getting shrunk, but there's an implication there that it's because of something that the Doctor did in King's Demons. Yeah,
they talk about in episode 4 of this too that he's been messing around with the tissue compression eliminator as well. So 6 of one, half a dozen of the other. Yeah,
right.
And instead he shrunk himself.
And I don't recall spoilers for anything that comes ahead, but I don't recall like when he comes back after this.
It's Mark of the Ronnie is his next TV story, and they basically hand wave it very quickly. The Ronnie makes a comment along the lines, "Well, I heard you got yourself into some trouble on Sarn, and we're supposed to have died." And the Master makes some quick comment about, "Yeah, everybody was supposed to think that," or something, and that's it. And they move right along with it. So
because at first I was like, "Oh, is this how he ends up like the charbroiled Master that we see?" And I'm like, "No, it's not. No, that's before this." And I'm like, that's what led me to think that maybe this was maybe when we see the Master, it's out of order. But
no, this is still technically the charbroiled Master having stolen somebody else's body way back in Keeper of Traken. Tremas,
Gotcha.
Which is an anagram of Master, because again, John Nathan Turner was not subtle.
No.
Gotcha. I would be, Kieran has his new show about the Master, and I guess I need to really pay attention to that podcast that he does, because my linear stories in order of the Master. First of all, I don't think I've seen them all, and certainly this one was a new one to me. Right. So I have gaps in my knowledge of his history and the encounters with the Doctor. So
yeah,
I thought it was pretty brilliant how they did it. That he was controlling Chameleon, and that he was, able to project himself through Chameleon. And,
I think that was just done out of necessity, because it was obvious to me that they were like, this robot thing isn't working.
How can we do that?
Because within the first 5 minutes, they get like the guy who's playing her brother,
stepfather,
Barry's brother, stepfather. Sorry,
that's a whole different family relation.
Yeah. Stepfather to be Chameleon. So he shows up in glorious paint, silver paint, for most of the rest of the storyline whenever they need him. And I think Chameleon's robot body just lays there at the end, like, yeah, that's about all it can do at this point.
Yeah.
I mean,
that was down. Yeah, that was the whole reason. Well, one of the reasons this story was written. They needed to write out Turlo. They needed to introduce a new companion. They got to blow up Chameleon because they've introduced him and they've kept him in a cupboard the whole season because nobody could figure out how to make the prop work.
Nope, exactly. And it was perfectly the way they did it was really well done. I enjoyed it. I thought I think it was one of Ainley's best actions as the Master pretty much during the Peter Davison era. And everything. I think the Master was pretty awesome in this one. And, but it's funny because, the Master's supposed to have the hypnotic powers, and he never hypnotized Perry, or was she just too dumb to be hypnotized?
He tried.
Yes.
Yeah.
You will follow me. I am the Master.
I'm perfect William Brown, and I can yell just as loud as you can.
Yeah,
I mean, Perry actually has a decent storyline here.
Yes, she does.
I mean, unfortunately, it's maybe Case of Androzani. After that, it just all goes way downhill. But in this one, she's running around doing things. Actually, coming to some conclusions on her own and figuring things out and being a much stronger character than she ended up being. Even while running around in her little tiny swimsuit
Or her short shorts.
Were there like a sale on hot pants or something? Because every other character is wearing the shortest shorts they can get them into.
It was the 80s. It was
they're on vacation. Everybody was on vacation. That's why.
Yeah. But even the alien guys though were wearing the ones on Star.
That's
hey, at least they're not wearing speedos or something like that. So I think it was okay.
I mean, it's
true.
When Turlo's going to rescue Perry because she's supposedly drowning, that part was actually pretty bad acting.
That was horrible.
Yeah, but he takes off. He's got these little short shorts on. He takes them off to reveal his Speedo.
And he goes swimming after her, still wearing his shirt.
Right.
He didn't want to. He didn't want to show off his birthmark.
That's true.
Or his criminal's brand.
His Myonic triangle or whatever it was called. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
His little brand.
I do think poor Nicola Bryant does get undermined somewhat by the fact that her second or third scene is that shot of her in the bikini, and they just do the sort of male gaze looking all the way up thing. And while she's an attractive woman, and I appreciate that, I do kind of feel the fact that she then jumps in the water, swims 10 yards, and gets the worst case of swimmer's cramp in the history of film and TV rather undermines the character straight out the gate. And it's just like, as Mary, as you said, it's all downhill from there, basically.
Yeah. The only thing that I give actually Nathan credit for is he didn't do all of that in slow-mo.
Oh,
like when she was running around.
Yeah, they wanted to.
Because it was so blatant. I'm like, I don't think I've ever seen a Doctor Who companion treated this way before. Like, what do they say? Like,
well, I don't know if I'd say that.
This one's for the dads. Like, that's what, that's.
I mean, Leela was kind of for the dad.
Leela, exactly.
Yeah. Leela just ended up as a better character overall.
I was going to say, and Leela was also a bit of an action heroine, beating up ninjas and Janus Thorns and everything else.
Yeah.
Perry just kind of...
Perry screamed.
Yes.
Yeah.
A
she
lot.
screams right away. Like,
she screams. She starts with screaming Howard, and then she's screaming Doctor the rest of the time.
Mm-hmm. We frequently talk on this show about when we watch a story. Sometimes we run across characters that would be like, "Wow, they would be really cool companions." I did not think that the first time I saw Perry. I did not think that the second time I saw Perry. Actually, though, Mary has a point, though, that I think it's the third episode or whatever where Perry kind of is pitted against the Master. I mean, she actually kind of runs circles around him, which is it's kind of fun, actually. I did really appreciate that. They gave her a lot more agency against the Master than I've seen in a lot of other people.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like it shows she could have been a much more interesting character. They just didn't go there because that's not what John Nathan Turner wanted.
Yeah.
I mean, and he had the whole stupid thing about her doing the fake American accent.
Oh my
which
God.
was completely unnecessary.
Yeah.
And it just detracted.
Well, it was funny. Judy came in while I was watching the 3rd episode, and she was like, "Why does that woman have a really bad American accent?" She was losing it every other word during the, and it was just like, "No, this is just bad." And if somebody who just catches it, it's just like makes it even worse.
Yeah,
But
it and unfortunately gives her, because we've seen Nicola Bryant like at conventions and everything, and she's quite nice to talk to, and she has a lovely voice. But the American accent makes her voice kind of screechy and uneven and just grating.
mhm.
Yeah, it is
Grating.
not
Not
good.
not Mel level grating, but grating.
Yeah. I mean,
Very, very close.
yeah.
I mean, you're right, Mike. It's pretty close, but it's not quite there yet.
Yeah.
Mm-mm.
I mean, bless her, at Big Finish, because I think at Big Finish she's really kind of found, and maybe that's also, by the time she was recording at Big Finish, she had another 15 years of acting experience, and then now another couple of decades doing it there. But the accent's gotten quite good over at Big Finish. But yeah, all over her TV run, but
Probably better
especially
script
this
too,
one.
Matthew.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, I was reading some of Eric Sayward's comments about this one and talking about the fact that John Nathan Turner basically commissioned it so they could go off and film on Lazarati, and Peter Grimwade brought in to script it, and Peter Grimwade tried and never, as Eric Sayward said, never quite cracked how to do it. So you ended up with a script that perhaps they had a lot of really interesting ideas in it, but maybe the execution wasn't quite there either.
And I think, you have a complete waste of Peter Wingard and Barbara Shelley, two very accomplished actors who I've seen in a lot of really great stuff. And Peter, bless him, I mean, he tries his hard
Oh, he is trying so hard. I have to give him so
Oh,
much
raise
yes,
the
he is.
credit.
material, the material up. Barbara is just like, she's just like, yeah, whatever. Like,
Yeah, I don't care. I just want a paycheck.
She
like,
phones it in.
Yeah.
I was like, that's Barbara Shelley? Are you kidding me? She's like, she's just not really even that noticeable in this.
Yeah.
But
Well, it's not a great part that she's playing.
not at all.
either,
Well,
yeah.
none of them have great parts, really. But man,
Yeah.
Peter, I give him credit because he's attacking it like he's doing Shakespeare.
Yeah, I mean, and actually, I think he does kind of give his character some, I don't know what's the right word,
Some
pathos,
weight.
maybe,
Some weight.
yes, some weight, because he is somebody who's really struggling with his faith is getting torn apart. I mean, you could have made a really interesting story out of this.
Yeah.
I mean, this is a guy who has spent his entire life with this belief system, and it is getting crushed as these events go. And in the end, he doesn't survive it.
Yeah.
But and actually, the actor is probably relieved at that point to be off screen.
Detail,
Yeah. I mean, that strand was supposed to have been stronger in the script, apparently. And again, Eric Sayward going, this is supposed to be a sci-fi adventure series, apparently just cut a lot of that strand out. So, and again, didn't do Peter Wingard any favors either.
No.
But, again, as we said, the script doesn't really do anybody any favors if you're not the main cast or, the master for that matter.
It's a lot of stuff to like toss up in the air. I mean, there's a lot of stuff going on. I mean, you're trying to tell just a Doctor Who story, an interesting story about these people. You've got to figure out what's going on with Turlo and his people and write him off. You've got to introduce a new companion. You've got the Master coming in with his relationship with Chameleon. And then through it all, Peter Davison has just got to like be the Doctor, which, sometimes is easy. Sometimes it's not so easy. Here, he's pretty good, but I wouldn't say this is a shining moment, a story for him, really.
Yeah.
Yeah,
The impression. Yeah. Sorry.
He
go
did
ahead,
as
Mary.
good as I was just going to say. I think he did the best he could with the material he had.
Well, sure.
Yeah,
When after stories like this, you're like, yeah, I can see where Peter's like, yeah, it's time.
Yeah. I mean, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, the thing that struck me watching it this time, because I've seen it 2 or 3 times over the years. This is the first time I'd seen it in a while. Was just how kind of grumpy and down he is for a lot of it. And I don't know whether that's a reflection of the script, because they do mention he's obsessed and depressed at the beginning of it, or if that's really kind of him kind of getting fed up with the third best script of the season he's been handed so far.
Yeah, which is not a huge bar. And he's also, but I think also it suits the character because he's losing, like he's just lost 2 companions. I mean, and heck, they just mentioned it in the 60th, right? About how he's never really gotten over Adric. He's never really taken a moment to process that. And then Tegan leaves, Nyssa leaves, and I will say, out of the 3 departures, Turlough's isn't bad, but I think Tegan's is probably the one that impressed me the most, which is saying a lot because I was not a huge Tegan fan. But the fact that after that Dalek story where she's just like, I can't do this anymore, and she just walks off, I'm like, that is pretty amazing. That's a pretty good, like, I feel that. With Nyssa leaving, man, we just did that episode. See, it feels like a few weeks ago, but it's probably like a year ago.
About 6 months ago. Yeah.
But yeah, that one felt forced. Like, oh yeah, and she's leaving.
I'm going to stay here to do research science to help cure these people.
Yeah,
Right.
I was like, that seems kind of, but I mean, I think
at least they did not marry her off to a alien warlord.
No.
Like,
but I mean, I think, if you could make a case and under a better, set of circumstances, aka showrunner, you would have had a really interesting arc where these companions were like, the Doctor and the companions were dealing with, Adric's death and not dealing with it, or dealing with it in their own way, and they couldn't be with the Doctor anymore. They just couldn't.
mm-hmm.
And nobody comes out and says that. I think Tegan might come close.
Yeah.
But and that's an interesting, looking at it that way. I think that's very interesting. I wish it was written that way, because you have to sort of put that on this storyline, and that's not fair to the story because I don't think it really holds up. But I find it an interesting idea anyway, and it does excuse a lot of holes in the writing.
Yeah.
No,
And
really
again, that's something that Big Finish, largely because they're fans, but also, they're reacting to and against things as much as anything else, did have done that in a lot of, in a lot of the audio stuff. Particularly, they did a whole arc where an older Nyssa came back at one point, and they were able to kind of delve into a lot of that. So, but it's a shame that the TV series didn't do that. And I think part of that is there was sort of this feeling, still even in the 80s, that everything had to be standalone. The viewers ought to be able to come in from week to week and pick it up straight away, which meant that you didn't get those opportunities for as you said, arcs or character development. Turlough's whole backstory gets shoved into 2 out of 4 episodes of this, basically.
Yeah, it's just
exactly.
like an info dump. They could have seeded that throughout his whole time, and they did not at
Right.
all.
Because they didn't know the whole time. I mean, it's pretty obvious when they were doing things.
That's just it. There's no planning. There's no, continuity.
I don't know if the plan was to have him leave, or if, I don't know what the story was behind that, or if he was supposed to stay with Barry, or I don't know. I mean, if he had that option, but yeah, they wrote him off pretty quickly. And in doing so, I'm kind of glad that he got like at least a story devoted to him leaving, rather than just an aside at the end going, yeah, I'm not going to go with you, Doctor.
Yeah.
No, it makes sense too, because it was just like, boom, here's his backstory. Boom, these are his people. Boom, this is everything about him. And he was a political exile, and that's why he was sent to Earth. And his brother and his father were sent to the desert planet. And it was just like, what? It just didn't make sense.
Has Mark Strickson returned to Big Finish or Doctor Who in any way?
Oh yeah, he's done a fair bit of Big Finish over the years. He lives in New Zealand now, funnily enough, so he's not done as much as some of the other companions. But he pops in and records stuff for them occasionally as well. I think he was even in.
He even wrote a Turlo book after he left. It was for Target. He
wrote the introduction to that, but the novel itself was written by Tony Atwood, who also did some Blake Seven stuff.
Right, exactly. So there's a story with him in it there too. And
I was going to say, because I haven't seen him. Like, I don't think, as far as I know, he doesn't show up a lot in the convention circuit or whatever, and that's probably because he's so far away.
He's in New Zealand.
I know he's done Gallifrey before, and I know he's done a couple others.
Yeah, he was just at Chicago TARDIS this past November. So
what's the I mean, now that I still don't really have a sense because I watched it all out of order, his story and everything. So it's hard for me to get a sense on how good of a companion he's been, but it struck me as okay, but he doesn't seem to have like a lot of backlash that some of the other companions do. So I take it that he's, I don't know. How do you guys feel about him? Do you regard him pretty well or
Pretty much, because he appeared, during the Black Guardian storyline. He started doing Margarine Undead.
Right, which we watched a lot of that.
Right. And he also was one that came in mid-season, and he actually was, he was like a carryover because Nyssa left his second story, and then Tegan left with the Dalek story, the episode before this, and then he leaves this one, and then Peter leaves the series after that.
So a lot of change very quickly.
Because they already knew that Peter was leaving when they did the 20th anniversary special, the Five Doctors, and that's why Colin Baker didn't reprise his role as Maxwell in the Five Doctors, because they said it would have been weird having Maxwell show up, and then next season halfway through the Doctor turned into the Sixth Doctor. Fifth Doctor becomes the Sixth, and it's like, hey, didn't I see your face before? Type thing. So that was all behind that, and it was real interesting too, because Peter's story when he changed, Caves of Androsani was not the final episode of the season. The Doctor changed. They had one whole story. Twin Dilemma was the final episode of that season.
Yeah, because
21.
John Nathan Turner had that experience with Legopolis going into Castrovalva, that there was suddenly that 8 or 9 month gap between the two. And he had decided, he didn't want to have that long transition from Tom Baker to Peter, like there'd been from Tom Baker to Peter Davison. So he's like, okay, we're going to end the season on the first story for the new Doctor. Forgetting, of course, that it's the end of the season and they've run out of budget and they've got the worst script of the season lined up. So, but that is literally a whole nother podcast.
You can go back and listen to us review Twin Dilemma. You'll be thrilled if you do.
We are not JNT fans.
No. But it was an interesting story, especially for the first time seeing it up on the screen for me, because reading in the book, you build it up and have it in your mind what everything looks like, and it didn't live up to what I had built up from the book and everything. But it was fun. I didn't hate it by any means. As a Peter Davison story, there's a lot worse, and there's also a lot better.
Low bar.
I know. So we're setting the bar low for these ratings, folks. So, any final thoughts before we go ahead and rate this one?
I mean, I'll say this about Turlo. I feel like he was one of those companions who had potential, and I actually found him kind of interesting. You know, and the whole, you know, he's being coerced into killing the doctor and all of that storyline was, you know, in some ways that was interesting, even though they didn't do anything with it like they should have. But I mean, they didn't. This whole era, I don't think was great, to be honest.
Wasn't that the first time they actually had a companion who was actually plotting to kill the doctor? You know, to be, you know,
Well, who knows how many secretly were plotting to kill the doctor?
Yeah, you're not wrong. I do have a theory about this story, which is that Russell T Davies at some point in late 2008, early 2009 watched it as he was writing David Tennant's last story. I have two reasons for thinking this. Both are from towards the end of the story. One of which is that when the Master is in the flame and is trying to get the Doctor to save him and he refuses to, the Master tells him that he will haunt him until the end of time. And secondly, one of Turlough's last things he says to the Doctor before he walks off is, "I don't want to go."
I heard that, and I was like, wow, we heard that, you know, maybe 35 years later with a certain doctor saying that.
Yeah.
Well, and you know, I mean, Peter Davison is David's doctor, right? So
yeah.
I don't know if that left a memory in his mind as well. But that isn't, Matthew, real quick, that is an interesting point too. I did, you know, for all intents and purposes, the Doctor is seeing the Master. I know he should know better, but that's for the last time, and he does look really not happy about it. He takes that in with him to the TARDIS, and Perry's like, you know, like, what's wrong? Or, you know, you just defeated your arch nemesis. Don't you want to go to Disneyland or something? You know, like, but he does not. I think, you know, I would like to, you know, I don't know things well enough about this time period, but it would not surprise me to learn that even though it's not scripted, that a lot of the threads that we've been talking about that was going along with the Doctor and how everything was weighing on him was not part of what Peter Davison was using in his performance.
It's certainly possible.
It does strike me as odd to do, like, without somebody saying, "Oh yeah, that makes sense. Play it that way." You know.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
it's a good possibility.
Yeah, I think I'm correct in saying too that Anthony Ainley had a bit of a deal with the Doctor Who production office that he would come in and do, you know, 1 or 2 stories a season or something, and this was the end of that contract. So at the time that they made the story, there may even have been some thought that this was going to be Anthony Ainley's final story as the Master. But again, you know, because he got along so well with John Nathan Turner and, you know, was doing the American convention circuit, it was like, well, you know, let's keep bringing him back.
But in recording this, Peter knows that it's his last, right? Like, he knows that he's done after one more story, right?
Oh yeah,
like he knows.
Yeah.
So
very much so. No, it's not a surprise. You know, Peter said he was leaving the season before, so it's
he was ready to go.
It was like he's ready to say goodbye. So
he had decided, you know, way back in sometime in the summer of '83. I think he has said that it was while he was doing the All Creatures Great and Small Christmas special for that year. They were filming it, and John Nathan Turner kept pestering him and his agent to say, "Hey, do you want to, you know, let's do a 4th season of Doctor Who?" And Peter just kind of thought about it and was like, "Yeah, I'm ready to move on now." And also something he was inspired to do because of some advice Patrick Troughton gave him right after he was cast, which was just do 3 seasons, my boy, and move on. And, you know, as Peter has said, it was probably a wise decision from a career point of view.
Yeah. Although look how many times he's gone back and done and revisited the character, you know.
I mean, he's done lots of other things.
Looking ahead at what came after his last season, I don't blame him for getting out at all.
I mean, he said that.
Yeah, the scripts were not getting better.
No.
Yeah.
No.
I mean, he's flat said, I think, when Matthew Sweet interviewed him for the season 19 Blu-ray, that sort of hour-long interview that's on that. I mean, he flat said that, he when he was doing Androzani, he kind of thought, well, if the scripts were this good, I would do a 4th season. But at that point, it was too late. And then watched everything that happened with Colin Baker in Colin's first season and kind of went, I got out just in time.
Yeah.
Mhm. All I have to say is Pip and Jane Baker. Let's end it there.
God.
So,
Yeah.
I don't think we need to go further than that.
Wow.
All right.
Even Matthew's rolling his eyes at that.
Yeah. They did 1.5 good scripts, but that's a whole nother podcast.
That's being generous.
That is being very generous, sir.
Yeah.
All right.
Well, I
Reading.
found a new appreciation for Terror of the Vervoids because of the special edition version they did for the Blu-ray. But again, that's literally a whole nother podcast.
All right, let's go ahead and rate 1 out of 5 TARDISes, 1 being the worst, 5 being the best. Mary, you got to go first tonight.
I think, to be honest, I did not really enjoy this episode. I mean, I didn't hate it. It's not the worst thing I've ever seen. But I think I'm pretty middle of the road on it. So I'm going to give it 2.5 TARDISes. I think that's about all it deserves.
Okay. Matthew.
I'm going to go 2.5 as well. I think it is. It's beautifully shot. There's some great location stuff. Some of the studio design stuff is great. However, it is about as average a piece of 80s Doctor Who as I can think of. It may even be the quintessential average 80s Doctor Who story. That's not a complete and total disaster. So 2.5 feels like about what it deserves because it's as middle in the road as it gets.
Okay. Mr. Mike.
I'm going to surprise everybody. I'm going to give it a 2.5.
Wow.
I agree with everything Mary and Matthew said. And just the only thing I can add to it is the only thing that there's a lot that is wasted here and not great. But however, the appearance of the Master, the last appearance of Turlo, I think that I'll give him a 0.5 point for all of that. So, and there's nothing in here that's like, oh my God, that's just so terrible. Yeah, Perry's introduction is not the best. But actually it surprises me when she does sort of have agency later on in the story. So I have to give it 0.5 credit for that. But no more than that, 2.5.
Okay. For me, I'm going to surprise everyone. It's not going to be a 2.5. I'm giving it a 3. That's right, folks.
Woo!
Ooh.
Anthony Ainley, his role in this knocked it up to a 3. I agree with what everyone else has said. I agree with that it's a mediocre story, that it's, it could have been easily 3 episodes. There's a lot of running back and forth between the caves, and how many times can we see Perry fall down the rocks, and it's just like, really, folks? Really? But the scenery was beautiful. I love the aisles where they found Perry. It was gorgeous. I thought that was very well shot. And I thought for an introduction of a character, this was one of her strongest episodes. And I enjoyed it. It actually moved very quickly for me. Before I knew it, I was done 3 episodes. And so for me, for a classic series story, for it to fly through that quickly, especially the Peter Davison era or what's to come after, is a miracle. So a 3 is a good solid one for me for that. And, definitely would love to hear from you guys at home. What are your thoughts? Feedback at our station Who is the best way to get in touch with us. Leave us feedback. Let us know what you think. We definitely would love to hear what you guys thought of this one. All right. That is going to wrap up the episode for tonight. Want to thank, of course, our regulars for being here. Mary, thank you as always.
Oh, thank you. Always so much fun to talk to you guys.
Anything you want to promote or anything?
You can find my artwork at maryogle.com or on Etsy at eVision Arts.
Excellent. And Mr. Mike, we've made it through another one.
We did, and as always, it's my pleasure.
Awesome. And Matthew, thank you for sitting in with us again, my friend.
Oh, thank you for having me. It's always a pleasure to come in for a bit.
Oh yeah, very nice. And you know what? It's always hearing your point of view on stuff and everything. What do you have going on? You're not doing Con K anymore, so what projects are you working on? Do you have any new books or anything?
I'm working on a couple of nonfiction Doctor Who books at the moment, actually. One
Awesome.
of which will be hopefully out from Obverse either late this year or sometime early next year. Looking at a much maligned Jodie Whittaker episode because I apparently decided I wanted to torture myself. The
You
other
had
one
an
will be
hour and 21 minutes into recording that we start bashing the chimney.
well, it's actually an episode I liked that apparently 5 other people on the planet did, so it has fallen on my shoulders to try and redeem it. So I won't say which one. I'm also working on a book which will be going back to where we've been talking about Big Finish, looking at the Big Finish Doctor Who Unbound stories, but also the Lost stories. Hopefully that'll be out. Well, I've got to finish writing the thing, so I don't know when it will be out, but those are my current works in progress.
Awesome, my friend.
Ooh.
That is very cool. Well, gentlemen, ladies, thank you everyone at home for being here with us tonight. It's awesome to be able to talk Doctor Who with you guys. We'll be back on our 2-week schedule going forward. So we'll see you guys in 2 weeks. And I think it's going to be a ton of fun. And before we know it, May will be here and we will be, boom, back into reviewing new Doctor Who. So, you know what? On behalf of all of us here, thank you so much. We will see you next time on Earth Station Who. Peace. And we are done. Bye, everyone.
Bye.
So long.
You're listening to the ESO Network, your station for all things geek.